Welcome again to Celebrating Act Two with John Mariani, the virtual gourmet at all things fine food and drink.
John, it's great to see you again. I love your virtual gourmet newsletter, which, by the way, is free at
Yes,
johnmariani.com.
amazing.
And one of the things I love is that you cover every aspect of food and travel, except I don't see enough. This is just me. I don't see enough about desserts. I'm a dessert fan. I love desserts. Now, I I have to ask, is dessert a universal part of meals? I mean, I know in the United States we've got apple pie, and we have a wonderful Italian bakery who gives us great Italian desserts. But is that true universally? People love dessert?
Yes, it depends entirely on the availability of sweetness. Now, you can readily say that back in prehistoric ages, that picking berries off a tree was quite a dessert. But there are advances in history. I mean, ices, sorbets, sherbets, and ice cream. I mean, come along at a time when you were able to transport ice in the winter, and either keep it in storerooms, very cold, or to be able to insulate it in some way so you could even bring it into the cities. This is before refrigeration made all of these things superfluous. But just think of it. I mean, there couldn't have been any ice cream or sherbets or ices until people figured out how to preserve that stuff. It's like cutting sheets of ice, big, huge sheets of ice for use in old storage rooms before they had before they had ice makers. So that's one thing. Okay, cold is a big part of desserts at those places where they can make them. Okay, but there isn't a country in the world that does not now have ice cream or sherbets or gelato. Different cultures do not put so much emphasis on desserts. Different cultures make pretty awful desserts. I find most Asian desserts, if they are made with fruits, they are generally fairly reliable. If they are not, I mean, they just don't know how to bake. Baking is something that the French prove takes huge amounts of butter, or even lard, but you build fat into that's what makes it so delicious. So that an apple pie, in Asia, they can make a nice apple pie, but they don't know how to make the crust. They don't know how to make it with lard. They don't know how to make it with butter. And thousand layer millefeuille or Napoleons. That technique, I don't know who invented it. It was either the French or the Italians, in which, hey, let's roll this out with an enormous amount of butter in it. And let's fold it over itself. Let's roll it out again. And you know what? We're going to do it, roll it out. I mean, so you get 10, 12 very, very thin layers. I don't know who thought of that, but it became an international dessert. So to phyllo dough. I mean, this stuff is made by mamas, and grandmas on the kitchen table, and is as thin as parchment. That's another type of dessert, which is more specific to the Middle East than anywhere else. In the Middle East, also, they use a lot of figs and dates. They call it Turkish Viagra, But where desserts get sweeter, and people like it really sweet, is dependent upon the availability of sugar. Now, sugar was not always around. Salt, if you lived near the sea, you could get all the salt you wanted from the sea. And where you didn't live near the sea, salt was at a premium. Okay, but sugar is something that has to be, first of all, processed and know how to do that, but you have to have access to it. And sugar cane and other sources of sugar like beets and so forth is simply not that available to most people in the world. So it had to be developed, and sugar, the production of sugar, of course, in the Indies, the West Indies, that is the Caribbean, drove the slave trade as much as any other product. Also, you had maple syrup coming from the north, but to extract this much maple syrup could take 3 or 4 trees in 5 or 6 days. It's a slow process. maple syrup, and you get what they call pancake syrup is flavored maple. It's not really maple syrup.
Right.
So different cultures have different cookies. The French are good at butter cookies. The British are good at crispy cookies. One of my favorite and sweetest desserts is sticky toffee pudding from England, and it looks like a dark brown shiny brick. And when you bite into it, it is just layered with so much caramel that has been cooked and caramelized and burned. It's just terrific. Now, one of the great uneaten desserts is of course the Christmas plum cake, the fruit cake at Christmas, which you give to people, and people say, "Ah, for Christmas," and then nobody knows what happens to it. And the writer Calvin Trillin, he says, "I'm convinced that it was only one plum cake that just goes around the world because nobody eats this thing." The Italians have a better version of that called panettone, which is also found throughout Eastern Europe, and in Russia they call it by a different name, but it's basically that domed cake, and it's made with a lot of eggs, and it's made also with saffron to give it color, and it just has a few bits of candied fruit and perhaps some nuts in it, but it's not the fruit cake, which just nobody likes. It's like when you get the Whitman sampler, chocolate caramel, peanut butter crackle. It's a cherry look. Certain things like that.
So true.
Because desserts are not that well known or appreciated since the 19th century, even well into the 20th century, in Asia, you wouldn't expect to find great desserts there, except that Western influence has been so enormous that some of the best chocolates are being made in department stores in Tokyo and Taiwan, and you can get just extraordinary pastries. But the Italians and the French, I'm Italian American, proudly been on this show talking about Italians. The Italians really don't come close to the French when it comes to the same dessert. They just taste different. They like to put in amaretto and almond paste and stuff that doesn't belong there. They don't necessarily use very much butter. You still have a lot of Italian cookies that you buy at the Italian pastry shop. They're crisp and they're nice and they're kind of sandy.
Sure. Well, I think of biscotti. Biscotti is dry. Wouldn't know what butter was. Yeah.
And then, of course, there's Scottish shortcake, which is extraordinary. And that's based on, again, an enormous amount of butter in there and sugar. And so, there's plenty of it out there. Just to talk a little bit about what's happened in restaurants is that people are pretty conservative about their taste in desserts. They have their favorite desserts, which is why every single Italian market in the world serves tiramisu, which only came around in the 1950s. It was created at a restaurant in Verona or somewhere, tiramisu, and that means pick me up. But it's on every single Italian restaurant. Also, Italian cheesecake, torta, the torta in Italian, is ubiquitous also. And if you go to a French restaurant, you expect to see creme brulee, you expect to see a chocolate tart, you expect to see a tarte tatin, which is a caramelized apple. So those things that people really really love and tend to order again and then again. So if you go to a French bistro, those are the 3 or 4 desserts you're going to get. They have no interest in the kind of extravagant desserts that famous pastry makers have mounted, like wedding cakes, which are ironically never eaten really. A lot of the stuff is a showpiece stuff made out of sugar, but you don't really eat it. But restaurant desserts now have pastry chefs. I would estimate that 75% of all the restaurants in America ship in their desserts. They don't have a pastry maker. But my daughter-in-law, Priscilla Scaff Mariani, is, I'm not kidding, she was voted by Valrhona Chocolate last year the best chocolate dessert maker in the world. Okay, knowing how to temper chocolate is not for the faint of heart. It is a involved process, and you have to have just the right kind of metal a surface to do it on. So don't try this at home, folks. So she's great, and she comes up with extravagant desserts or fool the eye. She's very good at fool the eye desserts because she works for a company which is very, very high end. And at the end of the meal, you don't just expect a piece of cheesecake. She's never made cheesecake, as far as I know, but she did something for a hotel down in the Cayman Islands, tropical, right? So she's thinking, tropical. She gave us on a plate one night what she made for them. It looked like a coconut, which you cut the top off, and it was coconut inside. I mean, exactly. And I said, "This is it." She put in the whole thing was made out of the coconut shell was made out of chocolate. All those little hairs on the outside of it, she created them, and they were like, it was rolled in it in such a way. The inside was not coconut, but it was coconut cream and other things. I mean, this is what great pastry chefs do. So you shouldn't expect those to be costing $7, $8. I mean, as a matter of fact, I remember back in the 1980s, I saw my first $9 dessert on a menu. $9 for, what's it going to go to? $15? Well, yeah, they are now $15. These, but those being largely made at home. Now, one of the secrets about steakhouses, especially in New York, is that they all use S&S cheesecake, which is made by one company in Riverdale in the Bronx. And the guy stores his boxes in his apartment. And he supplies all of the steakhouses in New York City because no one can make a better one. Junior's is a good one, and they ship, and Lundy's and others. You can ship and stuff, but and the S&S will freeze too. But it really is the perfect cheesecake of all time. And then there were, chocolate pudding, butterscotch pudding, mighty fine. You have to give a lot of credit to General Mills and Post and Mighty Fine for originally creating. But I will tell you that Mighty Fine pudding, which I ate 5 times a week, butterscotch, vanilla, and specifically chocolate, it doesn't taste anything like it. And then you start to look on the package and the ingredients. This used to have real chocolate and cocoa bars. Now it's lecithin and xylophone, and it's just take a look. I was looking at chicken bouillon cubes the other day. Chicken, it's chicken flavor cubes. Chicken flavor. American cheese flavor, not cheese. So you got to watch it, especially when it comes to desserts. But who really cares if the Milky Way or the Three Musketeers bars still tasting the same way? Go for it.
Okay,
John,
so I have a question. I have a question, John. What is your favorite dessert? If you could only have one more dessert for the rest of your life, what would it be?
A more elaborate answer would be profiteroles, which are puff pastry with vanilla ice cream and chocolate sauce. But my favorite dessert I have most nights of the week: ice cream with chocolate sauce, coffee. So ice cream is just fine with me. Absolutely fine.
And Coleman?
Cheesecake. No question about it. It's universal for me. Cheesecake.
Yeah, but you were
cheesecake.
Lundy's though. You were Lundy's cheesecake guy, right? New York City.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And my favorite was Aunt Grace's.
There's Italian cheesecake, there's French cheesecake, and there's Jewish cheesecake. And they different. The Italian uses ricotta, and the Jewish uses cream cheese, and the French uses so they're
cream cheese, New York style cream cheese cheesecake.
Philadelphia.
I want to give a shout out to my long deceased but favorite, or one of my favorite aunts, Grace, who used to make lemon meringue pie using Mighty pie filling, and she would do it in a glass pie plate, always in a glass pie plate. I think that was part of the magic of it. At least that's what I remember. Yeah. And she would make the crust herself, and then she would make that, and she would whip the eggs. And sometimes we actually we lived in a house together with her, and so every so often I could help do the egg whites. and they would always be these perfect little brown on the top of the egg whites after she put it in the oven a second time just to get it right. That was the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wanna end with a tip for everybody. All those what do they call them? Fruit cakes that you get at Christmas that people, oh, that's wonderful, and they throw them away. The magic to a fruit cake. I got this from my Australian mother-in-law. Those fruit cakes, and there's another brand of dessert that's like that looks, it sounds nice, but it doesn't. Nobody likes it. The magic answer to it is a thing called hard sauce.
Yeah.
Hard sauce. Now I don't know what hard sauce is made of, but it's got a alcoholic base of some sort. It's a white kind of creamy sauce, and you can buy it in the store. And you heat up the fruit cake, put some hard sauce on it, and that's the answer. You can actually eat this stuff. It's great. Truly.
You're not far wrong. What you do is you heat up the cake, you take the hard sauce, throw away the cake, and just eat the hard sauce. That's
All right. Well, we're looking forward to that on the holidays. Hard sauce.
There'll be one.
Yeah.
For more on Celebrating Act Two, visit our webpage, follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and tell your friends. Celebrating Act Two is the user manual for the second half of your life.